Hello, and welcome to Religious Rebels, a podcast where we push back on behavior-based religion, question Christianity's concepts, and seek to find Jesus in the awkward middle way of grace and truth. I'm Christy Lynn Wood. Hello, and welcome back to Religious Rebels. I'm glad you joined me today. So we're going to talk about something kind of different. We're going to be talking about Gnostic Christianity. What is it? What did it used to be? And how is it still influencing us today, especially within the Evangelical Church and as we deconstruct from the Evangelical Church? So I'm kind of excited about this. This started with a party that my husband and I went to for my work. It was supposed to be a Christmas party, but it got postponed to April. And then it just kind of carried me through as I did a little bit of research and was thinking about some stuff and pondering some things. And we're going to go from there. So I was at this party with my husband, and it was such a fun work party. We ended up sitting with some people that we didn't know very well. And yet, even though that's where we were sitting, we had so much fun. Just so much fun with them. Lots of laughter and getting to know each other and just really chill. And as we drove home, my husband said, how come we don't do that with Christians? Why is it so often that Christians gather together and there's just this like stiffness and fakeness and this attempt to be spiritual? And why does everything that we do with other Christians tend to be like geared towards spirituality? And what is it about the way we view this world and our faith and what it means to be a human? What is it that makes us become these like super spiritual people who cannot be real? So I posted this question on Threads and I got a lot of really interesting comments. There's a lot of people out there that are feeling similarly. They feel that lack within church of just genuine like time together and life together and just enjoying one another without an agenda, without spiritual stuff. And we talked about why that might be. And we talked about how church isn't always a safe place and we feel like we have to fake it because there's expectations on us. Or maybe we just feel like it's supposed to be a certain way. And so we're faking it to be super spiritual. Oftentimes, I think it's too scheduled. We have these plans and we have a specific way things have to happen. And it's just kind of like makes for an environment where it's not something where you can just be real, where you can just be a real human who's just having these human interactions, because everything has to be spiritualized. It's like the spiritual stuff is good and our normal everyday life body stuff is bad. And I was like, this sounds familiar. Where have I heard this before? And as I'm thinking about this and pondering it, and I'm thinking about our experiences in the church, as we move this whole this body is bad thing, like sometimes it feels like church and Christianity is all about sin control. It's all about body control. Like we have to follow these rules and do all this stuff to control our sin, to stop ourselves from sinning and to have this body control, that everything about our body is bad. And yet, guys, you've seen what happens in these high control situations where these people who supposedly have it all together, things come out and you realize, what? Wow. Like it's just some really bad things that have come out from people who look like they have it all together, which tells me that this body control and this sin control stuff doesn't really work. So it made me think of the word Gnostic. Like this is very Gnostic. These beliefs are Gnostic. And we have these ideas like this. And I was like, all right, I know a little bit about the Gnostics. I know that they think that the spirit is good and body is bad kind of thing. But let's do some research. So I found some really interesting articles, and I'm going to link one of them in the show notes. And the best part about this article is that it's a secular article. So it's written by an encyclopedia, and so it doesn't have a bias. It's not some Christian person trying to push one way or the other. It's just facts. It's just history of Gnosticism within Christianity and the way the church fathers kind of like stepped in to try to stop it. So as early as the 2nd century CE, so 2 centuries after Christ, these Gnostics show up on the scene. And they were very philosophical. They followed some of like Plato and Aristotle's thoughts and stuff like that. but they claimed to have this secret knowledge about the universe, about the nature of Christ, what his appearance meant, and they claimed to have gotten these revelations from Jesus himself. Now, growing up in a cult like I did, that already raises like 6 million red flags. If you're telling me you have secret knowledge and that Jesus himself revealed things to you, and it's been 200 years since he was here on earth, I'm a little concerned. Like, I'm a little worried, and I'm starting to think you might be a little crazy and maybe making stuff up. But they continue forward. And as I read this article, I was like, this is so interesting because of the way it seems to have woven its way back into the fabric of how we view our bodies and our spiritual stuff and Christianity these days. So they separated the spiritual from the physical. And they believed that there was this one good God, but they didn't think that he made the world because they saw the world as corrupted. And instead of recognizing that the world had been corrupted by sin, they decided that there was a second lesser deity who was not necessarily good, who made the world. And so therefore all material things, all of matter was bad. And so the world itself is bad, and our bodies are bad, and our spirit, something like this little piece of God that had fallen from heaven into the human bodies, was trying desperately to get back to God, to be reunited with him. That our spirit was trying to escape and get back to God. So super interesting philosophies and thoughts, and there's a lot more that you can go into, but that's kind of the basic gist. And during that time, they wrote these Gnostic Gospels. And that's what the church fathers decided these Gnostic Gospels were not accurate, that they were written by these Gnostic people. They were trying to tamp down these heresies that they were trying to share. And so they don't believe that these Gnostic Gospels are accurate at all, but they were written by these Gnostic people who claim to be getting these direct revelations from Jesus Christ. And in the Gnostic Gospels, these are the kinds of things that are portrayed. So Jesus says these things, that the kingdom of heaven isn't really real. It's all just in our own selves here. And it's all kinds of things that they claim that Jesus says that kind of support their views of the world and of God and of ourselves and of sin and all this stuff. The minute somebody claims truth and secret revelation, I am concerned, like I said. And so as I'm reading this article, and I love the fact that it was secular because I felt like it just gave me the facts. They went on to talk about how the church fathers were reacting to these kinds of teachings, and they did not agree with these Gnostics, and they started to create these words that we know as nowadays of orthodoxy and heresy. And they were kind of two sides of the same coin almost. So what we believe is orthodoxy. We are following the truths from who Jesus is, of what the apostles talked about him as, people who knew him, and we are rejecting your heresy and called them heretics. And so it's really interesting because the Gnostics did say, like, we got our teachings directly from Jesus. He taught us these secret things. There's the whole book of Mary Magdalene, where supposedly Jesus talked to Mary Magdalene, gave her secret knowledge and secret revelations. And yeah, like I said, I'm like, oh, red lights, red flags, all going off, very sketchy to me. And yet it's very intriguing because people within the progressive movement, people who are deconstructing, are very curious about these Gnostic Gospels and their definition of what happened and why the Gnostic Gospels were discarded is completely different from the definition that I got from the encyclopedia, which is secular, like I said. So, I mean, people say like, oh, the church fathers were just being bigoted. They just didn't want women to be in the Bible and stuff like that, because a lot of the Gnostic Gospels are more centered around women. And yet some of the things they say about women are pretty terrible as well. And so there's just a lot of thought behind that. And yet, as I'm reading about the Gnostics, I'm like, well, there's a reason that these Gospels were rejected. They're, first of all, 200 years after Jesus was born, claiming to be from people who knew him, and yet they have been written 200 years later. So, but I see these aspects within evangelical Christianity of this Gnostic idea that we are somehow in this body that's broken and that's bad, and that only the spiritual things are good, that we have to control this bad and sinful body and just focus on these spiritual things, that only some emotions are acceptable, like happiness and joy. and that anger and sadness and all these other emotions are bad and we need to get rid of them. And so I see these just kind of themes within some of the Christianity that I've experienced. And I honestly think they are these Gnostic themes. And it makes me wonder what it is about us as humans that we kind of keep traveling back to these same ideas, because I don't think most evangelicals would be like, oh yeah, I'm reading these Gnostic gospels and getting these truths from them. I think it's almost like this weird innate thing within us that's making us think that this body is bad and that only spiritual things are good. So an innate brokenness, not innate goodness. So I just want to remind you guys of some truth as we move through this episode, and just kind of the goodness and the truth of who God is and of who we are as broken people. So, contrary to what the Gnostics thought, I truly believe that we and all of creation has been made by a very good God, who loves us and who wants a relationship with us. And I think creation itself shows that to us. And I think we miss it a lot of times when we are believing things about the creation, that it happened by accident, that it was all a chance, it was just happened. And we miss the fact that this is God's handiwork, that He is literally calling to us from creation. Romans talks about this, that even before everything, like this creation is there proclaiming God to us in Romans 1. I think it's important for us to recognize that we are made in the image of God, and that it's not just like our spirit that's made in the image of God. There are things about our human body that are made in God's image. Does He have a body like us? No, but Jesus does. Jesus came to earth and put on human flesh and form, which is another thing the Gnostics don't believe. They think he appeared as a human, but He wasn't actually human, because that would make Him have to jump into this evil, bad body. And so I think that He was here, and I think that He was in a body like ours. And I think that He experienced the things that our bodies experience. And I don't think that that's bad. I think that it's a good thing to have this holistic idea of who we are, because every bit of our body is redeemable and it's valuable and it's going to be resurrected. As we look at Jesus and His resurrected body, like He had that resurrected form. And I think we're going to have that as well. And we're going to have these bodies forever. They're just going to be working perfectly like they're supposed to be. And so I really want to encourage us to live holistically, to live within every part of our humanity, to not be saying like, well, this body of mine is bad and I'm just, all the spiritual things I'm doing in my spirit are good. But to actually live holistically in this body that we've been given, to embrace all of our emotions, every single one of them, and to be curious about what these things are telling us, what these emotions are telling us. I'm feeling this. I wonder what that means. I wonder what's that telling me about things. What if that's telling me about myself? Like, what is it telling me about the environment that I'm in? Like, just be curious about those emotions instead of condemning some of them as bad. Just recognize that they are our emotions. They're part of our humanity and they're good. I think it's important for us to acknowledge our needs and our desires. And instead of rejecting those needs and desires, to care for our body, to take care of it, to take care of its needs, that we feed it healthy food and we're drinking enough water and we're getting enough sleep and we're going outside and we're exercising and we're taking care of this body that we've been given. And that our desires that we have, that we explore those desires, that we look deeper and we wonder, what is this desire telling me? What am I really looking for? Like, I have this desire within me. Like, what am I looking for? What do I really want? What do I really need? And I think as we explore those, like, sometimes it's surprising. It's easy for us to shut down those desires and be like, well, that's sin, that's wrong. And just instead of shutting it down, just say, what is this telling me? What is this telling me about myself? What is this telling me about God? What is it telling me about my own brokenness? Like, what do I need? And is there a better way to get this? I think it's important that we use our senses, that we use the five senses that God has given us, and maybe some of those extra senses that the scientists like to talk about, and just really explore the world that we've been given and enjoy the good things that are here in this world that we can enjoy with our senses. There's so many good things that God has given us that we can enjoy with our senses. And it's not wrong. It's not bad to be a holistic human and to live in this body we've been given. I think it's important for us to recognize that we are broken. And I think if we're all honest, we're going to recognize that and admit that there is brokenness within us. There is deep brokenness within us caused by sin, selfishness, and pride, and separation from God and from each other and from ourselves. Like there's deep brokenness. And we need rescue. We desperately need someone to rescue us. But Jesus came to do that. He came to rescue us. I think the question is, will we let him? Will you let Jesus save you? Will you let him rescue you and heal you and begin that transformation work in your heart? Will you allow him to be the savior that he is in your own heart? And I think it's important to do the things that make us human, to laugh, to cry, to scream, to be silent without all this guilt and doubt. I think so often we spend so much time, especially within some of the evangelical movements, of always trying to figure out if things are sin. Like, oh no, is this sin? Was I sinning? Have I sinned? And it's just this constant guilt and shame and just stuffing us down. And I think we need to recognize that sin is more than just behaviors, that it is the very deep brokenness within us. Like I said, that selfishness and that pride and these things that you can't just fix with behavior control. And we need more than just sin management. We need a heart transformation. And Jesus came to give that to us. And I think we just need to let him. Guys, I believe that Jesus is the truth, the real Jesus. I believe that he came and that he lived. And I believe that the Gospels in our traditional Bible tell us who he is, that they were written by people who actually knew him. And I believe that people who know him now who can say, like, I don't know how to explain this, but I've met somebody and he's transformed my life. Listen to those people. Listen to the people who knew Jesus. Listen to the people who know him now. And I just think that as we get to know God and as we get to know the story that we find in the Bible of how he made us, loved us, created us, wanted a relationship with us, pursued us, continued to pursue us, pursued all of humanity over and over and over again, came as a human to live with us, Emmanuel, God with us, and then died for us, and then resurrected, conquering death and sin, and said, I'm coming back for you. That is such a good story. And Jesus' story is the only one I know of a God who came down to rescue. Every other story is about people trying to earn their way to God. Jesus' story is the only one about a God who came down to rescue for no apparent reason except that he loved us so deeply that he was willing to become one of us and rescue us. Like, that's a crazy story. And yet I believe that it's real. I don't have all the answers, but I do have enough to keep putting my faith in and to keep seeking for the next and the next and the next, and to keep reevaluating and to keep wondering and to keep looking and to keep exploring this Jesus that I have come to know and love. So the historical and orthodox Jesus Christ, he is my savior and he is my friend, and I am going to fight for truth and I'm going to fight for reality until I'm not here anymore. That's just my plan. That's something that is so passionately a part of my heart. I want you to know Jesus. I want you to know that even though there's so many lies out there, so many lies, there's also a historical Jesus that you can trace the path of how he has just continued to grow his church since he left 2,000 years ago and redeem his church and restore his church over and over and over again. And you'll find people throughout every nook and cranny of history who have been transformed by him in a way that they cannot explain, and in a way that changes their life, and in a way that changes lives of others around them. So that's what I've got to share today, guys. I just want to encourage you, reject the lies that the spirit is good, the body is bad. Live holistically in this body that you have been given, free from guilt and shame, as you pursue a relationship with Jesus Christ that will transform your heart so you won't need to have to worry about sin management and behavior management. And you can just step into that freedom and loving relationship with Jesus Christ. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep searching.